The dust on her worn calico dress told Logan Finch that the young woman sprawled across the church pews had been traveling for weeks, maybe longer, and the hollows beneath her cheekbones suggested she had not eaten a decent meal in just as long. He had come into the small wooden church on the outskirts of Julesburg, Colorado, seeking a moment of quiet reflection after 3 weeks on the trail, driving cattle north, but instead found this unexpected sight beneath the afternoon light filtering through the simple windows. It was late September in 1878, and the Colorado plains had begun their slow transition toward autumn, the air carrying just enough chill in the mornings to remind folks that winter would arrive soon enough. Logan removed his hat and stood in the doorway for a long moment, considering what to do. The woman appeared to be in her early 20s, with dark auburn hair that had come loose from its pins and cascaded across the wooden pew. Her breathing was steady and deep, the sleep of someone utterly exhausted. He could see no belongings nearby, except for a small cloth bag that had fallen to the floor, its contents spilling out to reveal a hairbrush with missing bristles, a tattered handkerchief, and what looked like the remnants of hardtack wrapped in brown paper. He cleared his throat softly, not wanting to startle her, but she did not stir. Logan was a practical man of 28, raised on a ranch 30 miles south of Julesburg, and he understood that life on the frontier could be harsh for anyone, but especially for a woman traveling alone. The nearest boarding house was on Main Street, nearly 2 miles from this small church that served the scattered homesteads and ranches in the area, and from the looks of her, she would not have had the money for a room even if she had known about it. "Miss," he said, his voice gentle but firm enough to carry across the empty space. "Miss, you cannot sleep here." The woman stirred slightly, a soft murmur escaping her lips, but she did not wake. Logan stepped closer, his boots making quiet sounds against the rough wooden floor. He could see now that she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 22 or 23, with delicate features that were marred by exhaustion and what looked like the beginning of a sunburn across her nose and cheeks. Her dress, though dirty and worn, had once been of decent quality, suggesting she had not always been in such desperate circumstances. "Miss," he tried again, reaching out to touch her shoulder lightly. "You need to wake up now." This time her eyes flew open, and Logan found himself looking into a pair of startled hazel eyes that were simultaneously frightened and defiant. She jerked upright, pressing herself against the back of the pew as if trying to disappear into the wood itself, her hands coming up defensively. "I was not stealing anything," she said quickly, her voice hoarse from sleep and what sounded like dehydration. "I only needed a place to rest for a few hours. I will leave right now." "Easy," Logan said, holding up both hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not accusing you of anything. I am just concerned about you sleeping in a church. It is not safe, and it is not comfortable either." The woman's eyes darted around the church as if looking for an escape route, but Logan could see the moment when reality set in, and she realized she had nowhere else to go. Her shoulders sagged slightly, and some of the defiance left her expression, replaced by a weariness that made her look older than her years. "I appreciate your concern, but I am fine," she said, though the tremor in her voice suggested otherwise. "I will be on my way shortly." Logan studied her for a moment, noting the way her hands shook slightly and the pallor beneath the sunburn on her face. He thought of his own sister, who lived in Denver with her husband and 3 children, and how he would hope someone would help her if she ever found herself in such dire straits. "When did you last eat?" he asked directly. The woman's jaw tightened, and for a moment he thought she might lie, but then she seemed to realize there was no point. "Yesterday morning. A family gave me some bread." "And before that?" "The day before, I think. Maybe 2 days. It is hard to remember." Logan made a decision that he suspected would complicate his life considerably, but his conscience would not allow him to simply walk away. "My name is Logan Finch. I have a ranch, about an hour's ride from here. I am offering you a real bed for the night and a hot meal, maybe several hot meals from the looks of it. After you have rested and eaten, we can figure out what comes next." Suspicion immediately clouded the woman's features, And what would you expect in return for such generosity? Nothing except the knowledge that I did not leave someone to starve in a church, Logan replied honestly. I have a housekeeper, Mrs. Chin, who lives on the property with her husband. They have been with my family for 15 years. You will not be alone in the house with me if that is your concern. Why would you help a stranger? Because I was raised to believe that we help each other out here. The frontier is hard enough without us turning our backs on people in need. He paused, then added, Besides, you are sleeping in my family's church. My grandfather helped build it back in 1869. I feel somewhat responsible for anyone who seeks shelter here. The woman looked at him for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. Logan could see the internal struggle playing out across her face, the desperation warring with caution and pride. Finally, she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. My name is Hannah Abbott. I came from Missouri, looking for my brother who was supposed to be working at one of the ranches near here. But when I arrived in Julesburg last week, I learned that he had moved on months ago. No one knows where he went. I am sorry to hear that, Logan said sincerely. That must have been a terrible shock after coming so far. I spent what little money I had left on a room at the boarding house for 3 nights, thinking I would find work quickly. But no one wants to hire a woman alone, especially one without references or family in the area. Hannah's voice was steady now, though Logan could hear the underlying pain. I have been sleeping wherever I could find shelter for the past 4 days. Logan felt a surge of anger at the injustice of her situation, though he knew it was all too common. Women without male relatives to vouch for them often found themselves in impossible circumstances, caught between respectability and survival. The fact that Hannah had maintained her dignity and had not turned to more desperate measures spoke to her strength of character. Well, you have found help now, he said firmly. Come on, let us get you to the ranch. Mrs. Chin will have supper ready soon, and she always makes enough to feed an army. Hannah hesitated for another moment, then slowly rose to her feet. Logan could see how much effort even that simple movement took, and he stepped forward instinctively to steady her when she swayed. She flinched at first, but then allowed him to support her elbow briefly until she found her balance. Thank you, she murmured, bending to retrieve her small bag from the floor. She tucked the spilled contents back inside quickly, her movements efficient despite her weakness. Logan led her outside to where his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Copper, stood patiently tied to the hitching post. The late afternoon sun painted the plains in shades of gold and amber, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sagebrush and distant rain. Hannah looked at the horse with some trepidation, and Logan realized she might not have much riding experience. Have you ridden before? He asked. A few times, but not often. My family had a wagon, but only one old mare for plowing. Copper's gentle. I will ride behind you, so you do not have to worry about controlling him. Logan untied the reins and swung himself up into the saddle with practiced ease, then reached down to help Hannah up. She took his hand, her fingers cool and thin in his grip, and he pulled her up to sit in front of him. She stiffened immediately at the proximity, and Logan kept his touch as impersonal as possible, wrapping one arm loosely around her waist to keep her secure while keeping the reins in his other hand. Just relax, he said quietly. We will take it slow. They rode in silence for the first several minutes, following the rutted wagon road that led south from the church toward the cluster of ranches that dotted this part of the Colorado Territory. The landscape stretched out around them in rolling plains covered with prairie grass that had turned golden brown in the late summer heat, broken occasionally by stands of cottonwood trees that marked the presence of creeks and springs. In the distance, the Rocky Mountains rose against the western horizon, their peaks still holding snow even in September. Logan could feel the tension gradually leaving Hannah's body as Copper maintained his steady, even gait. She no longer held herself quite so rigidly, and after a while she asked, How long have you had your ranch? It was my father's ranch, Logan replied. He started it in 1865, right after the war ended. He passed away 2 years ago, and I inherited it. We run cattle mostly, about 500 head right now. I also breed horses, which is really my passion. I am sorry about your father. Thank you. He was a good man, taught me everything I know about ranching and about treating people fairly. Logan paused, then asked, "What about your family? Are they still in Missouri?" Hannah's voice tightened almost imperceptibly. My parents died of fever 3 years ago, within a week of each other. My brother James was all the family I had left. He came west 2 years ago, hoping to make his fortune. He wrote to me regularly at first, telling me about his work on various ranches and his plans to eventually buy his own land, but then his letters stopped coming about 6 months ago. That must have worried you terribly. It did. I waited for 2 months hoping to hear from him, but nothing came. Finally, I decided I had to find him. I sold everything I had, which was not much, and bought a train ticket as far as the money would take me. I had to walk the last 50 miles to Julesburg. The matter-of-fact way she recounted this made Logan's chest tighten with sympathy. That took considerable courage, he said, or considerable foolishness. I am not sure which yet. Courage, Logan said firmly. Definitely courage. They fell into a comfortable silence again, and Logan found himself acutely aware of the young woman sitting in front of him. Despite her obvious exhaustion and hunger, there was a quiet strength in the way she held herself, a refusal to collapse completely, even though she clearly wanted to. Her hair smelled faintly of dust and sage, and he could feel the delicate bones of her rib cage through the worn fabric of her dress, where his arm rested around her waist to keep her steady. The sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains when the ranch finally came into view. The main house was a sturdy 2-story structure built from lumber hauled from the mountains, painted white with dark green shutters. A wide porch wrapped around 3 sides, providing shade during the brutal summer months. Behind the house stood a large barn, several corrals, a chicken coop, and the smaller house where Mr. and Mrs. Chen lived. Smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, promising warmth and food. As they approached, an older Chinese couple emerged from the main house, clearly having heard the sound of Copper's hooves. Mrs. Chen was a small, efficient woman in her 50s, her gray streaked black hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her husband, slightly taller and thin as a rail, stood beside her with a quiet dignity that Logan had always respected. "Mr. Logan," Mrs. Chen called out, her English accented but clear. "We did not expect you back until tomorrow." "I finished the business in town earlier than expected," Logan replied, bringing Copper to a halt in front of the porch. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Hannah down. She slid from the saddle with his assistance, and he felt her knees buckle slightly when her feet touched the ground. He steadied her quickly, and Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes took in the situation immediately. "This is Miss Hannah Abbott," Logan said. "She has had a difficult time and needs food and rest. Can we prepare the guest room?" Mrs. Chen asked no questions, which was one of the many reasons Logan valued her. She simply nodded briskly and turned to her husband. "Mr. Chen, please help with the horse. I will take Miss Abbott inside." Before Logan could say anything else, Mrs. Chen had swept forward and taken Hannah's arm with surprising gentleness for someone so businesslike. "Come, child. You look ready to drop. We will get you cleaned up and fed properly." Hannah threw a glance back at Logan, something uncertain in her eyes, but he nodded encouragingly. "You are safe here. Mrs. Chen will take good care of you." He watched as Mrs. Chen led Hannah into the house, noting how the younger woman seemed to shrink slightly with relief now that the immediate crisis had passed. Mr. Chen approached and took Copper's reins with a slight bow. "She is very thin," the older man observed quietly. "She has been without food for some time." "I know. I found her sleeping in the church. She has been looking for her brother, but he seems to have moved on from the area." Logan rubbed his face tiredly. "I could not just leave her there." "Of course not. You are your father's son." Mr. Chen's tone was approving. He led Copper toward the barn and Logan followed, helping to unsaddle the horse and brush him down while his mind churned with thoughts about what he was going to do with an unexpected house guest. By the time Logan entered the house through the kitchen door, the sun had fully set and lamps had been lit throughout the main floor. He could hear water being poured upstairs, suggesting that Mrs. Chin had drawn a bath for Hannah. The kitchen smelled gloriously of beef stew and fresh bread, and Logan's own stomach rumbled with hunger. He washed his hands and face at the kitchen pump, then sat at the large wooden table to wait. Mrs. Chin appeared about 20 minutes later, her expression thoughtful. "The poor girl is bathing now. I had to help her because she was so weak. Mr. Logan, she has bruises on her ribs from where she fell some days ago, and her feet have blisters from walking in shoes that do not fit properly. She needs more than one meal and a night's sleep." "I know," Logan said, scrubbing a hand through his dark hair. "I have been thinking about that. She needs work and we need help. You have been saying for months that the house is too much for you to manage alone now that your arthritis has gotten worse." Mrs. Chen's eyes narrowed shrewdly. "Are you suggesting we hire her? Would that be so terrible? She clearly needs the work and you need the help. It seems like it could benefit everyone. And what do you know about this girl? She could be running from trouble. She could be a thief." Logan shook his head firmly. "I do not believe that. I think she is exactly what she appears to be, someone who has had bad luck and is trying to survive. Besides, you are an excellent judge of character. You can spend some time with her and make your own assessment." Mrs. Chin considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I will speak with her, but the decision will be hers as well. She may not want to stay here." "Fair enough." The sound of footsteps on the stairs drew their attention, and Hannah appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing a clean but simple dress that Mrs. Chin must have provided. It was slightly too large for her thin frame, but the blue fabric brought out the gold flecks in her hazel eyes. Her auburn hair had been washed and hung in damp waves down her back, and though she still looked exhausted, the bath had clearly revived her somewhat. "Please sit," Mrs. Chin commanded, pulling out a chair at the table. "I will bring food." Hannah sat obediently, folding her hands in her lap with a kind of careful politeness that spoke to her upbringing. Logan took a seat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. Mrs. Chin bustled around the kitchen, ladling generous portions of stew into bowls and cutting thick slices of bread that she slathered with butter. She placed everything in front of Hannah with a firm look. "Eat slowly," she instructed. "Your stomach will need time to adjust after so many days with little food." Hannah nodded and picked up her spoon with hands that trembled slightly. She took a small bite of the stew, and Logan watched as her eyes closed briefly in something that looked like pure bliss. She ate slowly, as instructed, but he could see how much effort it took for her to pace herself when she clearly wanted to devour everything in front of her. Mrs. Chen served Logan his own meal, then sat down with them, sipping tea while she watched Hannah with the same assessing gaze she used when evaluating horses or cattle. After several minutes of silence, broken only by the quiet sounds of eating, she spoke. "Mr. Logan tells me you came here looking for your brother." Hannah swallowed her mouthful of bread before answering. "Yes, madam. James Abbott. He worked on a few ranches in the area, but I have not been able to find anyone who knows where he went after he left the Bar T Ranch last spring." "The Bar T," Mrs. Chin repeated thoughtfully. "That is the Richardson place, about 20 miles north of here. They have had trouble keeping workers because old man Richardson is difficult to work for. I spoke with someone at the general store in Julesburg who said the same thing," Hannah said. "But no one seems to know where the workers went after they left. Some said north toward Wyoming, others said west into the mountains." Logan finished his own stew and leaned back in his chair, considering. "I know Tom Richardson slightly. We are not friends, but we do business occasionally. I could ride over there tomorrow and ask him directly if he remembers your brother or knows where he might have gone." Hannah's head snapped up, hope flaring in her tired eyes. "Would you really do that?" "Of course. It is only a few hours' ride, and I have been meaning to talk to him about buying one of his bulls anyway." Logan did not mention that he had no real interest in Richardson's bulls, but it provided a convenient excuse. "I do not know how to thank you," Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You have already done so much." Mrs. Chen set down her teacup with a decisive clink. "Mr. Logan and I have been discussing a proposal. I need help managing this house. My hands are not as young as they used to be, and the work is too much for one person. We would like to offer you a position as a household assistant if you are interested. The pay would be fair, and you would have your own room and meals provided." Hannah stared at the older woman as if she had spoken in a foreign language. "You are offering me a job, but you know nothing about me. I know you are respectful, you follow instructions, and you have not complained even though you are clearly exhausted and in pain. That is enough for me to give you a chance." "Mrs." Chen's voice was brisk but not unkind. "Of course, if you prove to be lazy or dishonest, you will be dismissed immediately. But I do not think that will be a problem." "I am a hard worker," Hannah said quickly. "I can cook and clean and do laundry. I can mend and sew. I helped my mother run our household for years before she passed away. I will not disappoint you." "Then we have an agreement," Mrs. Chen said with a satisfied nod. "You will start after you have rested for a few days and regained your strength. There's no point in you trying to work when you can barely stand." "I can start tomorrow," Hannah protested. "I do not want to be a burden." "You will start when I say you are ready," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "And that is final." Logan hid a smile at Hannah's expression. Clearly, she was not accustomed to being managed so efficiently. But he could also see the overwhelming relief in her eyes, the way her shoulders sagged as if a great weight had been lifted. For the first time since he had found her in the church, she looked like she might actually believe things could get better. After dinner, Mrs. Chen shooed both Logan and Hannah out of the kitchen so she could clean up. Logan showed Hannah to the front parlor, a comfortable room with a stone fireplace and several well-worn chairs. A fire had been laid but not yet lit, and Logan knelt to strike a match and coax the kindling into flame. September nights in Colorado could turn cold quickly, and he wanted Hannah to be comfortable. "This is a beautiful home," Hannah said softly, looking around at the simple but well-made furniture and the books that lined one wall. "You must be very proud of what your father built." "I am," Logan agreed, settling into one of the chairs and gesturing for her to take another. It was not easy, especially in those early years, but he persevered, and now the ranch is profitable enough to support several families. "How many people work here?" "Besides Mrs. Chen and her husband, I have 4 regular ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse. During cattle drives and roundup, I hire on additional help. It is a good operation, stable, and growing slowly." Hannah was quiet for a moment, staring into the growing fire. When she spoke again, her voice was hesitant. "Mr. Finch, I want you to know that I understand what a risk you are taking by helping me. I could be anyone, as Mrs. Chen pointed out. The fact that you offered me shelter and food, and now a job, without any proof of my character or background, is extraordinary. I will do everything in my power to prove myself worthy of your trust." "I believe you will," Logan said simply. "And please call me Logan. Mr. Finch makes me feel like I should be wearing my father's boots, and they were always too big for me." A small smile tugged at Hannah's lips, the first genuine smile he had seen from her. It transformed her face, softening the lines of worry and exhaustion, and revealing the pretty young woman beneath the layers of hardship. Logan felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he quickly pushed aside. She was his employee now, someone under his protection, and he would not complicate that relationship with inappropriate feelings. "Then you should call me Hannah," she replied. "Miss Abbott is too formal for someone who has already seen me at my absolute worst. You were not at your worst. You were surviving, and there is no shame in that." They talked for a while longer, carefully avoiding any topics that were too personal, sticking instead to safe subjects like the ranch and the surrounding area. Logan told her about Julesburg and its history, as a rough and tumble town that had grown up around the railroad and how it had slowly civilized itself over the past decade. Hannah listened attentively, asking intelligent questions that revealed a quick mind and genuine curiosity. Eventually, Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway and announced that it was time for Hannah to rest. Logan stood immediately and bid Hannah good night, watching as Mrs. Chen guided her back upstairs to the guest room. He remained in the parlor for a while longer, staring into the fire and wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had acted on instinct and compassion in helping Hannah, but now he had to consider the practicalities. A young, unmarried woman living in his house would certainly cause talk in town, regardless of the fact that the Chens lived on the property as chaperones. People liked to gossip, especially about anyone who deviated from strict social norms. But Logan had never been one to worry excessively about what others thought. His father had taught him to do what was right and let the gossips talk themselves out. Besides, Hannah clearly needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. The rest would sort itself out in time. True to his word, Logan rode out early the next morning to the Bar T Ranch. The day was clear and cool, perfect for riding, and Copper covered the 20 miles in good time. The Richardson place was smaller than Logan's ranch and not as well maintained. The fences needed mending, and several of the outbuildings looked like they had not seen fresh paint in years. Logan found Tom Richardson in the barn, supervising two workers who were mucking out stalls. Richardson was a heavy-set man in his 60s with a perpetual scowl and a reputation for being tight with his money. He looked up when Logan entered the barn, his expression shifting to one of wary curiosity. "Finch, this is a surprise. What brings you all the way out here?" "Looking for information, actually," Logan said, getting straight to the point. "Did you have a man named James Abbott working for you last spring?" Richardson's scowl deepened as he thought. "Abbott! Abbott! Yeah, I remember him. Young fellow, skinny, talked too much. Worked here for about 3 months before he quit without notice. Left me in a bind right before Roundup." "Do you know where he went? Why do you want to know?" Richardson's tone was suspicious. "His sister's trying to find him. She came all the way from Missouri looking for him." Richardson shrugged, clearly uninterested in family drama. "I heard he headed up to Wyoming with a couple of other fellows. They were talking about finding gold in the hills up there. Fool's errand, if you ask me, but young men never listen." "Do you remember when exactly he left?" "Must have been late April or early May. Around the time the snow was melting in the high country." Logan absorbed this information with a sinking feeling. If James Abbott had gone to Wyoming 4 or 5 months ago, he could be anywhere by now. The territory was vast, and men moved around constantly following work or chasing dreams. Finding him would be like looking for a specific needle in a field full of haystacks. "Thank you for the information," Logan said. "I appreciate it." "That all you came for?" "Thought maybe you wanted to talk about selling me some of those horses you're breeding." Logan managed a non-committal response and made his escape as quickly as politeness allowed. The ride back to his ranch seemed longer than the ride out, and he spent the time trying to figure out how he was going to tell Hannah what he had learned. The news was not good, but at least it was something. He found Hannah in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen when he arrived home in the late afternoon. Despite having only been there one day, Hannah was already helping prepare dinner, peeling potatoes at the large wooden table while Mrs. Chen rolled out dough for biscuits. Both women looked up when Logan entered, and he could see the hope and anxiety warring in Hannah's expression. "Did you learn anything?" she asked immediately, setting down her paring knife. Logan pulled off his hat and sat down at the table, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Chen poured for him. "I spoke with Richardson. He remembers your brother. James worked there for about 3 months last spring before leaving without notice, sometime in late April or early May." "Did he say where James went?" "Wyoming, according to the rumors. Richardson said James was talking about looking for gold with some other men." Hannah's face fell, but she tried to hide her disappointment. "Wyoming is so large. How would I ever find him there?" I'm not going to lie to you, Hannah. It will be difficult. Men move around constantly in the mining camps, and communication is unreliable at best. Logan paused, choosing his words carefully. But that does not mean it is impossible. I have some contacts in Wyoming, people I have done business with over the years. I can write to them and ask if they have heard anything about a James Abbott or where the most promising gold strikes are happening right now. You would do that for me? Of course. You are part of this household now, and we take care of our own. The smile Hannah gave him was brighter than the first one he had seen, filled with genuine warmth and gratitude. It did something strange to Logan's heart, made it beat just a little faster than it should. He took a long drink of his coffee to cover his reaction, reminding himself firmly of his earlier resolution to keep things professional and appropriate. Over the next few weeks, Hannah settled into life on the ranch with surprising ease. Mrs. Chen had been right about needing the help. The house was large, and maintaining it properly required constant work. Hannah threw herself into her duties with dedication, attacking every task with the kind of focused energy that suggested she was grateful for the distraction. She scrubbed floors, washed windows, did laundry, helped with cooking, and learned to make bread under Mrs. Chin's exacting tutelage. But more than that, she began to bloom. With regular meals and proper rest, the hollows in her cheeks filled out and her skin regained a healthy glow. She smiled more often, and sometimes Logan would hear her humming while she worked. Mrs. Chen clearly approved of her new assistant, and the two women developed an easy working relationship based on mutual respect. Logan found himself increasingly aware of Hannah's presence in the house. He would catch glimpses of her hanging laundry in the yard, the autumn sun turning her auburn hair to copper and gold. Or he would come in from working with the horses to find her in the kitchen, flour dusting her nose as she kneaded bread dough. She had a quick laugh that she tried to suppress out of propriety, but occasionally it would burst out of her, bright and musical. He told himself repeatedly that his interest was purely that of an employer, concerned for his employees' welfare. But he could not quite explain why his heart lifted every time he walked into the house and heard her voice, or why he found excuses to linger in the kitchen during meals when he would normally have eaten quickly and returned to work. Hannah seemed equally uncertain how to behave around him. She was always polite and respectful, but Logan sometimes caught her watching him when she thought he was not looking. Her gaze would slide away quickly when their eyes met, color rising in her cheeks. The awareness between them was palpable, a living thing that neither acknowledged but both felt. Mrs. Chen noticed, of course. The older woman missed nothing. One evening after Hannah had gone up to her room, Mrs. Chen cornered Logan in the parlor where he was supposedly reading the newspaper. "You are developing feelings for that girl," she said bluntly, in the way only someone who had known him since childhood could get away with. Logan looked up from the paper he had not actually been reading. "That is ridiculous." "Is it? You watch her constantly. You find reasons to be near her. You smile more when she is in the room. She is a lovely young woman who has had a difficult time. I am glad to see her doing better. That is all." Mrs. Chen made a skeptical sound. "You can lie to yourself if you wish, but do not lie to me. And more importantly, do not hurt that girl. She has been through enough without you playing with her feelings." "I have no intention of hurting her," Logan said firmly. "Which is exactly why I am keeping my distance and maintaining appropriate boundaries." "Appropriate boundaries," Mrs. Chen repeated with a snort. "Life is too short for excessive appropriateness, Mr. Logan. Your father would have told you the same thing." She left before Logan could respond, and he sat alone in the parlor for a long time, staring at nothing. His father would have told him to follow his heart, it was true. Samuel Finch had been a practical man in business, but a romantic when it came to matters of love. He had courted Logan's mother for 2 years before finally convincing her to marry him, and they had been devoted to each other until her death from pneumonia when Logan was 16. But Logan's situation was different. Hannah was his employee, dependent on him for her livelihood and shelter. Any overture he made could be seen as coercive, taking advantage of the power imbalance between them. He would not risk making her uncomfortable or forcing her to choose between her heart and her security. Better to keep his feelings to himself and let her continue to heal from her ordeal. It was a noble plan that lasted exactly 3 more days. Logan was working in one of the corrals with a young stallion he was training when he heard a commotion near the barn. Raised voices, one of them female and distressed. He dropped the lead rope and ran toward the sound, his heart pounding with sudden fear. He rounded the corner of the barn to find Hannah backed against the wall by 2 men he did not recognize, drifters from the looks of their dusty clothes and worn equipment. "Come on, sweetheart," one of them was saying, a leering grin on his weathered face. "We just want a little conversation. No need to be unfriendly." "I asked you to leave," Hannah said, trying to keep her voice steady, despite the obvious fear in her eyes. "This is private property, and you are not welcome here." "That is not very nice," the second man said. "We only stopped to ask for water. Surely a pretty thing like you can spare some water." Logan covered the remaining distance in 3 long strides, putting himself between Hannah and the 2 drifters. His hand dropped instinctively to the gun at his hip, and the casual menace in his posture made both men step back quickly. "The lady asked you to leave," Logan said, his voice deadly calm. "I suggest you do so immediately." The first drifter held up his hands in a placating gesture, his earlier bravado evaporating. "No trouble intended, mister. We were just passing through." "Then keep passing." Logan did not raise his voice, but something in his tone made it clear he would not tolerate any argument. "And do not come back." The 2 men retreated quickly, mounting their horses and riding off toward the main road without looking back. Logan watched them until they were out of sight, then turned to Hannah. She was pressed against the barn wall, her face pale and her hands trembling. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. "Did they hurt you?" Hannah shook her head, but her voice quavered when she spoke. "No, they did not touch me. They just appeared while I was collecting eggs from the chicken coop. They seemed friendly at first, asking for directions to Julesburg, but then they started saying inappropriate things and moving closer. I tried to walk away, but they followed me." Fury swept through Logan at the thought of those men frightening her. "You should not have been out here alone. Where was Mr. Chen?" "He rode into town to pick up supplies. I did not think there would be any danger just walking to the chicken coop." Hannah's voice broke slightly. "I am sorry. I should have been more careful." "This is not your fault," Logan said firmly. He wanted to pull her into his arms, to comfort her and assure her that she was safe, but he held himself back. "Those men had no right to speak to you that way, let alone corner you. Come on, let us get you back to the house." He walked beside her across the yard, maintaining a careful distance, even though every instinct screamed at him to take her hand or put his arm around her. When they entered the kitchen, Mrs. Chen took one look at Hannah's face and immediately set about making tea, clicking her tongue in disapproval when Logan explained what had happened. "You must be more careful," Mrs. Chen scolded gently, pressing a cup of hot tea into Hannah's hands. "There are bad men everywhere, especially now with winter coming on. Drifters looking for easy targets before the snow sets in. I will make sure someone is always within calling distance when you are outside," Logan added. "And I am going to teach you how to shoot. Every woman living on a ranch should know how to defend herself." Hannah looked up at him with wide eyes. "Shooting lessons?" "Yes. Starting tomorrow. It is a practical skill, not just for defense, but also for dealing with predators that might threaten the chickens or the livestock." Over the following weeks, Logan spent an hour each afternoon teaching Hannah how to handle and shoot his spare revolver. She proved to be a surprisingly good student, approaching the lessons with the same focused determination she brought to her household duties. Her hands were steady, and once she overcame her initial nervousness about the noise and recoil, she developed decent accuracy. But the lessons also meant spending time alone with her away from the house, and Logan found his carefully maintained emotional distance eroding with each passing day. Hannah was smart and funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard and made him laugh. She asked thoughtful questions about the ranch and seemed genuinely interested in learning about cattle breeding and horse training. When he talked about his plans for expanding the operation, she listened attentively and occasionally offered suggestions that were surprisingly insightful. They fell into the habit of talking long after the shooting practice had ended, standing in the field while the autumn sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. Hannah told him about her childhood in Missouri, about her parents, and the small farm they had worked. She spoke of her brother with obvious love and lingering worry, and Logan found himself even more determined to help her find James, if only to see the shadows leave her eyes. For his part, Logan shared stories about growing up on the ranch, about learning to rope and ride before he could properly read. He told her about his mother, whose death had devastated his father, even though Samuel had never shown it outwardly. And he spoke about his dreams for the future, about building the ranch into something that could support multiple families and provide good work for years to come. "You talk about the ranch like it is a living thing," Hannah observed one evening as they walked back toward the house. October had arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the first hints of changing leaves in the cottonwoods. "In a way, it is," Logan replied. "It has to be tended and nurtured, protected and helped to grow. If you neglect it, it will wither. But if you treat it right, it will provide for you and your family for generations. Your father taught you that." "He did. And now I am trying to honor his memory by being as good a steward of this land as he was." Hannah was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "He would be proud of you. I can tell from the way you run this place, the way you treat everyone who works for you. You are a good man, Logan Finch." Her words, spoken with such simple sincerity, hit Logan harder than he expected. He stopped walking and turned to face her, and in the dying light of the day, he saw his own confused feelings reflected back at him in her eyes. The awareness that had been building between them for weeks crystallized into something undeniable, and Logan felt his resolve crumbling. "Hannah," he said, her name rough on his tongue, "I need to tell you something." She looked at him expectantly, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed nervously. Before he could continue, however, the sound of an approaching horse broke the moment. They both turned to see Mr. Chen riding up the path from town, a bulging saddlebag indicating he had collected the mail along with his other errands. "Mr. Logan," Mr. Chen called out as he dismounted, "there are several letters for you." Logan took the small bundle of envelopes, flipping through them quickly. Most were business correspondence, but one caught his attention immediately. The return address was from a town called Rock Springs in the Wyoming Territory, and he recognized the name as belonging to one of the contacts he had written to inquiring about James Abbott. "This might be about your brother," he said to Hannah, tearing open the envelope. He scanned the contents quickly, his heart sinking as he read. When he looked up, Hannah was watching him with desperate hope. "What does it say?" she asked. Logan chose his words carefully. "My contact knows of a James Abbott who was working a claim near South Pass City earlier this summer, but he moved on about 6 weeks ago, and no one is sure where he went. Some say he headed further north, others say he gave up on mining and went back to ranch work." "So we are no closer to finding him," Hannah said, the hope draining from her expression. "Not exactly. My contact is asking around and promised to write again if he learns anything more. And now we know for certain that your brother was in Wyoming recently." "That is something." Hannah nodded, but Logan could see she was fighting back tears. Without thinking, acting purely on instinct, he reached out and pulled her into his arms. She stiffened for a moment, then collapsed against his chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Logan held her carefully, one hand cradling the back of her head, while the other rubbed gentle circles on her back. "We will find him," he murmured. "I promise you, Hannah, we will not give up." She pulled back after a few moments, wiping at her eyes with embarrassment. "I am sorry. I should not have fallen apart like that." "You are allowed to feel disappointed. You have been searching for him for months." Logan handed her his handkerchief, and she accepted it gratefully. They walked the rest of the way to the house in silence, but something had shifted between them. The embrace had been innocent, offered in comfort, but it had broken through the final barrier of formality that Logan had tried so hard to maintain. He was no longer simply her employer, and she was no longer just his employee. They were something more, something neither of them was quite ready to define. That night, Logan lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling and replaying the feel of Hannah in his arms. The way she had fit against him so perfectly, the scent of lavender soap in her hair, the trust she had shown in accepting his comfort. He was in dangerous territory now, emotionally speaking, and he knew it, but he also knew there was no going back. His feelings for Hannah had grown beyond his control, and denying them was no longer possible. The question was what to do about it. He still had all the same concerns about the power imbalance between them, about taking advantage of her dependent position. But Mrs. Chen's words echoed in his mind. Life is too short for excessive appropriateness. Maybe it was time to stop overthinking and simply be honest about what he wanted. The decision, when it finally came, was surprisingly easy. He would court Hannah properly if she was willing. He would be clear about his intentions and give her every opportunity to refuse without fear of losing her position or her home. He would treat her with the respect she deserved and let their relationship develop naturally without pressure or expectations. And if she did not share his feelings, he would accept that and find a way to remain her friend and employer without making things awkward. The next morning, Logan sought out Mrs. Chen in the kitchen before Hannah came downstairs. The older woman looked up from the stove where she was frying bacon, one eyebrow raised in question. "I need your advice," Logan said without preamble. "About Hannah. How did you know?" "Because you have had the look of a lovesick calf for weeks now, and yesterday Mr. Chen told me he saw you embracing her in the yard." Logan felt heat rise in his face. "It was not like that. She was upset about her brother, and I was comforting her." "And now you want to do more than comfort her," Mrs. Chen said shrewdly. "You want to court her." "Yes, but I do not want her to feel obligated or pressured because I am her employer. How do I make my intentions clear while also making it clear that she is free to refuse?" Mrs. Chen considered this for a moment, then nodded approvingly. "You tell her exactly that. You explain your feelings honestly, and then you give her time to think about it without expecting an immediate answer. You make it clear that nothing will change in her position here regardless of her decision. And if she says no, then you accept it gracefully and move forward. But Mr. Logan, I do not think she will say no. That girl looks at you the same way you look at her." "You think so?" "I know so. Now go. She will be down for breakfast soon, and you should speak with her in private." Logan found Hannah in the front parlor, dusting the shelves that held his father's collection of books. She was humming softly to herself, completely absorbed in her task. The morning sun streaming through the windows caught in her auburn hair, creating a halo effect that made Logan's breath catch in his throat. "Hannah," he said from the doorway, "could I speak with you for a moment?" She turned, her expression shifting to one of concern when she saw how serious he looked. "Of course. Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. I just need to tell you something important, and I would appreciate it if you would hear me out before responding." Hannah set down her dusting cloth and clasped her hands in front of her, clearly nervous. Logan crossed the room to stand near her, close enough to speak quietly, but far enough to maintain propriety. "I am going to be very direct because I think that is fairest to both of us," he began. "Over the past few weeks, I have developed feelings for you that go beyond employer and employee. I find myself thinking about you constantly. I look forward to seeing you each morning, and I am disappointed when the day ends and you retire to your room. I value your company, your intelligence, your humor, and your strength. In short, Hannah, I would very much like to court you properly, if you would be willing." Hannah's eyes widened, and a flush spread across her cheeks. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words. Logan continued quickly, wanting to make sure she understood completely. I need you to know that your position here is secure, regardless of your answer. If you do not share my feelings, or if you are not ready for this kind of relationship, nothing will change. You will continue to have a home and work here for as long as you wish. I am not offering this because I expect something from you, but because I would regret not being honest about how I feel. The silence stretched between them for what felt like an eternity. Hannah's hands twisted together, and Logan could see the war of emotions playing across her face. Hope, fear, uncertainty, and something that looked very much like longing. Logan, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything right now. Take all the time you need to think about it. No, you do not understand. I am not hesitating because I do not know how I feel. I am hesitating because I am trying to find the right words. She took a deep breath, meeting his eyes directly. I have feelings for you too. I have for weeks now, but I did not dare acknowledge them because you have been so kind to me, and I did not want to misinterpret your generosity as something more. Joy surged through Logan's chest, so intense it was almost painful. Then you would be willing to let me court you? Yes, Hannah said, and now she was smiling, that bright, transformative smile that made her entire face glow. Yes, I would like that very much. Logan took her hand carefully, as if it were something precious and fragile. Her fingers curled around his, warm and certain. Then we will do this properly. Sunday dinners after church, chaperoned walks, time spent getting to know each other, even better than we already do. That sounds perfect, Hannah agreed. Then, more hesitantly, are you sure about this? I come with nothing, Logan. No dowry, no family connections, no prospects beyond what you have so generously provided. And I am still searching for my brother, which means I may have to leave if I find him. I am more sure about this than I have been about anything in a long time, Logan said firmly. And as for your brother, we will face that when and if the time comes. For now, I just want the chance to see where this leads. They stood there in the morning sunlight, hands clasped, smiling at each other like fools. Mrs. Chen's discreet cough from the doorway broke the spell, and they sprang apart guiltily, though they were still holding hands. Breakfast is ready, Mrs. Chen announced, her expression carefully neutral, though her eyes twinkled with satisfaction. And Mr. Logan, you have a visitor. Mr. Richardson from the Bar Tea Ranch is here to see you. Logan suppressed a groan. Tom Richardson's timing could not have been worse. He squeezed Hannah's hand once more before releasing it reluctantly. I will deal with whatever he wants as quickly as possible. He found Richardson on the front porch, hat in hand, and looking surprisingly nervous for a man known for his gruff demeanor. Finch, sorry to show up unannounced. What can I do for you, Richardson? That girl you asked about, the one looking for her brother. Is she still here? Logan's protective instincts immediately went on alert. Why do you want to know? Because I might have some information for her. I was in town yesterday, and I ran into one of my old workers, fellow named Pete Morrison. He was one of the men who went north with James Abbott. I asked him what happened, and he told me Abbott is working on a ranch near Cheyenne in the Wyoming Territory. The Rocking H Ranch, owned by a man named Henry Walsh. Logan's heart began to pound with excitement. You are certain about this? Morrison seemed sure, said he and Abbott parted ways in August, but at that time Abbott was definitely at the Rocking H and planning to stay through the winter. That is excellent news. Thank you for bringing it. Richardson shuffled his feet awkwardly. Listen, I feel bad about how things went with Abbott. He was a decent enough worker, and I should not have been so hard on him. If his sister is here, tell her I hope she finds him and that he is doing well. It was as close to an apology as Richardson was likely to get, and Logan accepted it with a nod. After the older man left, Logan hurried back inside to find Hannah. She was in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen, nibbling on toast while clearly trying to process everything that had happened in the past hour. Hannah, Richardson just brought news. He ran into someone who knows where your brother is. Hannah jumped to her feet so quickly she knocked over her teacup. Where? A ranch near Cheyenne called the Rocking H. According to Richardson's source, James was there as of August and planning to stay through the winter. Tears sprang to Hannah's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. Cheyenne, that is only a few days' journey from here, is it not? About 3 days by horseback, 5 or 6 by wagon. We could send a letter, but that could take weeks to get there and receive a reply, especially with winter approaching. It would be faster to go in person. I can go, Hannah said immediately, if you could give me a few days off and loan me the fare for the stage. Absolutely not, Logan interrupted. You are not traveling alone to Cheyenne. I will take you myself. We can leave in a few days as soon as I arrange for someone to manage things here while I am gone. Logan, I cannot ask you to do that. It is too much. You are not asking? I am offering. He glanced at Mrs. Chen, who was watching the exchange with obvious approval. Mrs. Chen, do you think you and Mr. Chen can handle things for a week or so? Of course. The ranch hands know what to do, and we can manage the house easily. You should go with her. Hannah looked between them, clearly overwhelmed. I do not deserve all of this. You deserve much more, Logan said firmly. Now let us start planning. We will need supplies for the journey, and I want to send a telegram ahead to the Rocking H to let them know we are coming. With any luck, your brother will be there waiting when we arrive. The next few days passed in a flurry of preparation. Logan arranged for his most trusted ranch hand to oversee operations while he was gone, and Mrs. Chen helped Hannah pack a traveling bag with practical clothes and supplies. Logan decided they would take a wagon rather than ride horseback, both for Hannah's comfort and so they could bring proper camping equipment for the nights they would have to spend on the trail. The telegram he sent to the Rocking H Ranch received a prompt reply confirming that James Abbott was indeed employed there and would be informed of his sister's impending arrival. Hannah cried when Logan showed her the telegram, and he held her while she wept with relief, no longer bothering to maintain any pretense of emotional distance. They left on a crisp October morning, the wagon loaded with supplies and pulled by a matched pair of sturdy horses. Mrs. Chen had packed enough food to feed an army, and Mr. Chen had checked every inch of the wagon and tack to ensure everything was in perfect working order. The ranch hands gathered to see them off, all of them having become fond of Hannah during her time there. The first day of travel took them northeast across the plains, following the well-worn trail that connected the scattered ranches and settlements. They made good time, and Logan found himself relaxing into the rhythm of the journey. Hannah sat beside him on the wagon seat, wrapped in a warm shawl against the autumn chill, and they talked easily about everything and nothing. That evening, they made camp near a creek lined with cottonwoods. Logan set up a tent for Hannah while he would sleep in his bedroll under the wagon. He built a fire and made coffee while Hannah unpacked the food Mrs. Chen had provided. They ate a simple meal of cold chicken, bread, and apples, sitting by the fire as the stars came out overhead. I have never been this far from Missouri, Hannah said, gazing up at the vast expanse of sky. It is beautiful, but also a little frightening. Everything feels so big out here. You get used to it, Logan said. After a while, you start to appreciate the sense of freedom that comes with all this space. Is that why your father came west? Partly, but mostly he came because he wanted to build something of his own, something that did not depend on his family's money or connections back east. He wanted to prove himself. It sounds like he succeeded. He did, and he was happy, which I think mattered more to him than the financial success. Logan poked at the fire with a stick, sending up a shower of sparks. He told me once that the best decision he ever made was marrying my mother and bringing her out here, even though it was a hard life for her. He said being with the person you love makes everything else worthwhile. Hannah was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "He sounds like he was a wise man." He was! They sat in companionable silence, the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of a coyote the only sounds. Logan found himself hyper-aware of Hannah's presence beside him, the way the firelight played across her face. and turned her hair to burnished copper. It would be so easy to reach out and take her hand, to pull her closer and kiss her. But he restrained himself, remembering his promise to court her properly. The second day of travel was similar to the first, with clear weather and good roads. They passed several other travelers exchanging greetings and news. That evening, they camped on the open prairie, and Logan taught Hannah how to identify different constellations. She proved to be an apt student, her questions intelligent and her interest genuine. It was on the third day that things became more complicated. The weather had been gradually deteriorating, with gray clouds building on the horizon and the wind picking up. Logan kept a nervous eye on the sky, hoping they could reach the next town before the storm hit. But by mid-afternoon, it was clear they would not make it. The rain began as a light drizzle, then quickly intensified into a downpour. Logan urged the horses to move faster, but the road had turned to mud and the going was slow. He spotted an abandoned line shack in the distance and made for it, pulling the wagon up under the minimal shelter of a lean to attach to the side of the small structure. "Come on," he shouted over the sound of the rain, helping Hannah down from the wagon. "Let us get inside." The shack was small and dusty but dry, with a stone fireplace and a few pieces of rough furniture. Logan got Hannah settled, then went back out to tend to the horses and retrieve their supplies from the wagon. By the time he returned, he was soaked to the skin and shivering from the cold. Hannah had already started a fire in the fireplace using materials she found in a box near the hearth. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, providing warmth and light. She looked up as Logan entered, her expression concerned. "You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death," she said firmly. "I will turn my back while you change." Logan appreciated her practicality. He stripped off his wet shirt and pants, grateful that he had packed dry clothes in his traveling bag. Once he was dressed in dry wool trousers and a flannel shirt, he hung his wet things near the fire to dry. "Your turn," he said to Hannah. "Your dress is soaked at the hem, and your shawl is wet through. Mrs. Chen packed extra clothes for you." Hannah hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the intimacy of changing clothes in such close quarters. But Logan moved to the window, staring out at the rain while she quickly changed behind him. When she announced she was decent, he turned to find her wearing a simple skirt and blouse, her damp hair hanging loose down her back. The storm showed no signs of letting up, and as the afternoon faded into evening, it became clear they would be spending the night in the shack. Logan used the supplies from the wagon to prepare a meal, heating soup over the fire and making coffee. They ate sitting on the floor near the fireplace, using their bedrolls as cushions. "This is not exactly the proper chaperoned courtship I promised you," Logan said with a wry smile. Hannah laughed softly. "No, but I trust you, and it is not as if we had any choice about the storm. Still, people in town will talk if they find out we spent a night alone together. Let them talk. I know the truth, and so do you. That is what matters." Her faith in him made Logan's chest tighten with emotion. They finished their meal in comfortable silence, then Logan banked the fire for the night. He insisted Hannah take the single narrow cot that stood against one wall, while he would sleep in his bedroll on the floor. She protested, but he was firm. The storm raged through the night, rain pounding on the roof and wind howling around the corners of the shack. Hannah tossed and turned on the uncomfortable cot, and Logan lay awake on the hard floor, intensely aware of her presence only a few feet away. Around midnight, when a particularly loud crack of thunder shook the building, Hannah gasped in fear. "It is all right," Logan said into the darkness. "Just thunder. We are safe here." "I know. I am sorry for being foolish." "You are not foolish. Storms can be frightening." They fell silent again, but after a few minutes, Hannah spoke hesitantly. "Logan, are you awake?" "Yes." "Would you think less of me if I admitted I am scared?" "Not at all. Come here." He sat up and opened his arms, and after a moment's hesitation, Hannah climbed down from the cot and settled beside him. Logan wrapped his blanket around both of them, holding her carefully while the storm raged outside. Her head rested on his shoulder, and he could feel her gradually relax as his solid presence reassured her. They stayed that way for the rest of the night, neither sleeping much, but both drawing comfort from the closeness. It was innocent but intimate, a stolen moment of tenderness that deepened the connection between them. When dawn finally came, gray and damp but calmer, they pulled apart with obvious reluctance. "Thank you," Hannah said softly, "for holding me, for not taking advantage. I would never take advantage of you, Hannah. I hope you know that." "I do. It is one of the many reasons I care for you." The road had turned to mud, so they had to wait until mid-morning for conditions to improve enough for safe travel. When they finally set out, the sun had broken through the clouds, and the world looked washed clean and new. They reached Cheyenne by late afternoon, and Logan secured rooms for them at a respectable hotel. Separate rooms, with Hannah's on a floor occupied by several families, ensuring complete propriety. The next morning, they rode out to the Rocking H Ranch, which was located about 10 miles south of town. Hannah had been quiet during breakfast, clearly nervous about the upcoming reunion with her brother. Logan squeezed her hand reassuringly as the ranch buildings came into view. A tall, thin young man with auburn hair a shade darker than Hannah's was working in one of the corrals. He looked up as their wagon approached, his expression shifting from curiosity to shocked recognition. The pitchfork he was holding clattered to the ground, and he vaulted over the fence with surprising agility. "Hannah," he called out, disbelief and joy warring in his voice. "Hannah, is that really you?" "James!" Hannah was off the wagon before Logan could even bring it to a full stop. She ran to her brother, and they collided in a fierce embrace, both talking and crying at the same time. Logan watched with a smile, giving them several minutes of privacy before climbing down from the wagon. Eventually, James noticed him and pulled back from Hannah with a questioning look. "Who is this?" "This is Logan Finch," Hannah said, her face glowing with happiness. "He helped me when I arrived in Colorado with nothing. He gave me work and a home, and he is the reason I was able to find you." James extended his hand to Logan, his grip firm and his eyes grateful. "Then I owe you more than I can ever repay. Thank you for taking care of my sister." "She has been taking care of herself quite well," Logan replied. "I just provided some assistance along the way." The owner of the Rocking H, Henry Walsh, emerged from the barn and invited them all inside for coffee and conversation. Over the next few hours, the story of the past 2 years gradually emerged. James had indeed gone looking for gold in Wyoming, as Richardson had said, but after several months of hard work with nothing to show for it, he had given up and returned to ranch work. He had been writing letters to Hannah regularly, he claimed, but somehow they had never reached her. "I was sending them to the old address in Missouri," James explained. "I did not know you had moved after selling the farm." "I moved to a boarding house in town after I sold the property," Hannah said. "But I never received any letters. They must have been lost or sent to the wrong place." "I am so sorry, Hannah. If I had known you were looking for me, if I had known you were struggling, I would have come for you immediately. I know you would have, but it has all worked out. Logan found me and helped me, and now here we are." James studied his sister carefully, noting the way her eyes kept drifting to Logan, the way Logan hovered protectively nearby. "Is there something I should know about your relationship with Mr. Finch?" Hannah blushed but met her brother's gaze steadily. "Logan has been courting me, with proper intentions." "I see." James turned to Logan with an assessing look that was almost comically protective. "And what are these proper intentions?" "To marry her, if she will have me," Logan said without hesitation. "But I wanted her to find you first, to have her family back before making any permanent decisions." James absorbed this, then slowly smiled. "Well, any man who would help my sister the way you have, and who speaks of marriage openly rather than trying to take advantage, is the kind of man I can respect. You have my blessing, for what it is worth." "It is worth a great deal," Logan said sincerely. "Hannah loves you very much, and your approval means everything to her." They stayed at the Rocking H for 2 days, giving Hannah and James time to catch up properly. Logan liked James Abbott, finding him to be honest and hardworking, if a bit impulsive. The young man clearly adored his sister and was grateful beyond words for Logan's intervention in her life. On the second evening, as they sat around the fire in the ranch house, James brought up a delicate subject. Hannah, I have been thinking, I know you have a job and a home with Logan, but you are my sister. If you want to stay here with me, we can find a place together. I make enough money now to support us both. Hannah looked at her brother with obvious affection, but then her eyes moved to Logan. Thank you, James. It means the world to me that you would offer. But my life is in Colorado now. My home is there. With Logan, James said, not making it a question. Yes, with Logan. Logan felt his heart swell with love and relief. He had not wanted to pressure Hannah, had been prepared to let her stay with her brother if that was what she wanted. But hearing her choose him, choose their life together, filled him with a joy so intense it was almost overwhelming. The journey back to Colorado was different from the journey out. Hannah sat closer to Logan on the wagon seat, their shoulders touching. They held hands openly and talked about the future with an ease born of certainty. When they stopped to make camp at night, Logan kissed her for the first time, a gentle, reverent kiss that promised love and respect and all the tomorrows to come. I love you, Hannah Abbott, he murmured against her lips. I think I have loved you since I found you sleeping in that church pew. I love you too, she whispered back. And I will marry you, Logan Finch, whenever you ask. Then I am asking, will you marry me? Will you be my wife and my partner and the mother of my children? Yes, yes to all of it. They were married in the same small church where Logan had first found her on a crisp November morning with golden leaves drifting down from the cottonwoods. Mrs. Chen stood up with Hannah and Mr. Chen stood with Logan. The entire community turned out for the wedding, curious about the romance that had bloomed so unexpectedly. Even Tom Richardson attended, looking uncomfortable in a suit, but genuinely pleased for the couple. James had ridden down from Wyoming for the occasion, and he walked his sister down the aisle with tears in his eyes. When the preacher asked who gave this woman to be married, James's voice rang out clear and strong. I do, with a grateful heart, and the knowledge that she has found a good man. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard and food enough for everyone. There was music and dancing and laughter, and as the sun set and the first stars appeared, Logan pulled his new wife into his arms for a dance. Happy? He asked, looking down into her glowing face. Happier than I ever thought possible, Hannah replied. When I was sleeping in that church, cold and hungry and alone, I never imagined I would find this, a home, a family, love. You gave me all of that. You gave me just as much, Logan said seriously. You brought light and laughter back into my life. You made me remember what it was like to dream about the future instead of just managing the present. They danced until the moon rose high overhead, surrounded by friends and family, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from their shared struggles. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Hannah continued to help Mrs. Chen manage the household, but now as mistress of the house rather than an employee. She threw herself into learning everything she could about running a ranch, often accompanying Logan as he worked with the horses or checked on the cattle. Her quick mind and genuine interest made her an excellent partner in all aspects of the operation. James visited regularly, usually staying for a week or two during slow periods at his own ranch. He and Logan became genuine friends, bonded by their shared love of ranching and their mutual devotion to Hannah. During one visit in the spring following the wedding, James confessed that he was courting a young woman in Cheyenne, the daughter of the local doctor. She is smart and pretty and does not mind that I am just a ranch hand, James said with obvious pride. I think I might ask her to marry me. Do it, Logan advised. Life is too short to wait when you have found the right person. Hannah threw her arms around her brother in delight when he confirmed his engagement a month later. The wedding was held in Cheyenne that summer, and Logan and Hannah made the journey north to attend. Watching James and his bride exchange vows, Logan reached for Hannah's hand and squeezed it gently, remembering their own wedding day. The following spring brought even greater joy when Hannah discovered she was expecting a child. Logan was beside himself with excitement and nervousness, hovering over her constantly until she finally ordered him to stop fussing. Mrs. Chen took charge of the situation with her usual efficiency, making sure Hannah ate properly and rested enough while still allowing her to remain active. Their son was born on a warm September evening, delivered by the doctor from Julesburg, with Mrs. Chen assisting. Logan heard his first cry from the hallway, where he had been pacing for hours, and tears sprang to his eyes at the sound. When he was finally allowed into the bedroom, he found Hannah exhausted but radiant, holding a red-faced, squalling bundle. "Meet your son," she said softly, holding out the baby to Logan. He took the infant with shaking hands, awed by the tiny, perfect features and the surprisingly strong grip of miniature fingers. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. I love you both so much I cannot find the words." They named him Samuel, after Logan's father, and the ranch became a happier place with the sound of a baby's laughter echoing through the house. Logan proved to be a devoted father, often carrying young Samuel around in a sling while he worked, teaching him about horses and cattle before the boy could even understand the words. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, and they named her Rose after Hannah's mother. She had her mother's auburn hair and her father's steady gray eyes, and from the moment she could walk, she followed her older brother everywhere. The house that had once seemed too large and empty was now filled with the chaos and joy of family life. James and his wife had children of their own, two daughters born close together, and the cousins spent summers together, alternating between the Wyoming ranch and the Colorado ranch. Those summers were filled with the sounds of children playing, with riding lessons and fishing expeditions, and long evenings around the fire telling stories. As the years passed, the ranch continued to prosper under Logan's careful management. He had expanded the horse breeding operation, and his animals were sought after throughout Colorado and Wyoming. The cattle operation remained steady and profitable, providing a reliable income that allowed them to weather the occasional hard years. Hannah had proven to be exactly the partner Logan needed. She kept the books with meticulous accuracy, managed the household with efficiency and warmth, and served as a sounding board for Logan's ideas about improving the ranch. More than that, she had created a home filled with love and laughter, a place where their children could grow up secure and happy. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Logan surprised Hannah with a trip back to Missouri. They left the children in Mrs. Chen's capable care and took the train east, retracing the journey Hannah had made alone so many years before. They visited the graves of her parents, placing flowers and telling them about the life she had built. They saw the farm where she had grown up, now owned by another family but still recognizable. "I am glad I came back," Hannah said as they stood looking at the old house. "I needed to remember where I came from, to honor the people who shaped me. But this is not home anymore. Home is with you, back in Colorado." "I feel the same way about you," Logan said, putting his arm around her waist. "Wherever you are, that is home." They returned to the ranch renewed and grateful, throwing themselves back into the rhythm of ranch life. Samuel was 10 now, already showing signs of becoming an excellent horseman like his father. Rose was 8, with her mother's quick wit and her father's determination. Both children attended the small school that had been built in Julesburg, riding there each day with several other ranch children. Life was not without its challenges. There were years of drought that tested their resources, harsh winters that took a toll on the livestock, and the occasional injury or illness that reminded them how fragile life could be. But they faced every obstacle together, drawing strength from their love and their shared commitment to the life they had built. When Logan turned 40 and Hannah 34, they welcomed a surprise addition to the family, another son they named Thomas after Hannah's father. Samuel and Rose were old enough to help care for their baby brother, and the house was once again filled with the sounds of infancy. Mrs. Chen had retired by then, though she and Mr. Chen still lived in their small house on the property. Hannah had taken over full management of the household, aided by a young woman from town who came in several days a week to help. Mrs. Chin spent her days tending her garden and spoiling her honorary grandchildren, a role she embraced with unexpected enthusiasm. One evening, when Thomas was about 2 years old, Logan and Hannah sat on the front porch, watching the sun set over the plains. The children were inside with Mrs. Chen, who was telling them stories about China, where she had been born. The sound of their laughter drifted out through the open windows. "Do you ever think about that day I found you in the church?" Logan asked, reaching for Hannah's hand. "All the time," she replied, lacing her fingers through his. "I think about how close I came to giving up, to just lying down and not getting back up. If you had not found me that day, I do not know what would have happened to me. But I did find you, and look at everything that came from that one moment of me walking into a church seeking some quiet." Hannah smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I used to wonder why God allowed me to go through so much hardship, losing my parents and then my brother, wandering alone and afraid. But now I understand that every step of that difficult journey led me here, to you and our children, and this life. I would not change a single moment because it all brought me home." "You are home," Logan agreed, kissing the top of her head. "And I am home, and we will keep building this life together, one day at a time." The years continued to roll forward like the endless Colorado plains, bringing changes and constancy in equal measure. Samuel grew into a fine young man who inherited his father's ranch and eventually married a teacher from Julesburg. Rose fell in love with a neighboring rancher's son and stayed nearby, raising her own family just a few miles from where she had grown up. Thomas showed an early aptitude for numbers and eventually went to Denver to study business, though he always came home for important occasions. James remained close despite the distance, visiting several times a year and exchanging long letters with Hannah. He had prospered at the Rocking H, eventually becoming foreman and then buying a small ranch of his own nearby. His daughters grew up strong and independent, much like their aunt, and maintained close relationships with their Colorado cousins. Logan and Hannah grew older together gracefully, their love deepening with each passing year. They became the heart of their extended family, the place everyone came home to for holidays and celebrations. Their house was always full of grandchildren and later great-grandchildren, the sound of young voices echoing through the rooms, just as their own children's voices once had. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren filled every room and spilled out into the yard. There was food and music and dancing, just like at their wedding 4 decades before. As the party wound down and the sun began to set, Logan led Hannah out to the front porch, seeking a moment of quiet amid the chaos. They sat in the same rocking chairs they had occupied for decades, holding hands and watching the familiar landscape painted in shades of gold and amber by the dying light. 40 years, Hannah marveled. Where did the time go? "Into all of this," Logan said, gesturing at the house full of family behind them. "Into every day we worked side by side, every child we raised, every challenge we faced together. The time went into building something that will last long after we are gone." "No regrets?" Hannah asked, though she already knew the answer. "Not a single one. You?" "Only that I did not meet you sooner. But then again, maybe we met exactly when we were supposed to. Maybe we both needed to go through what we did to be ready for each other." Logan lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I love you, Hannah Finch. I have loved you since I found you sleeping in that church pew, looking lost and afraid but refusing to give up. And I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "I love you too," Hannah whispered, tears of joy sliding down her weathered cheeks. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for offering me a real bed and a hot meal and a chance at a new life. Thank you for everything." They sat there as the stars came out one by one, just as they had done countless times over the past 40 years. Inside the house, their family celebrated and laughed and loved, a living testament to the power of compassion and courage and choosing to help a stranger in need. The cowboy who had found a woman sleeping in the church pews and offered her shelter had given her so much more than a bed and a meal. He had given her a future, a family, and a love that would echo through generations. And she, in turn, had given him a home filled with warmth and laughter, had stood beside him through every season of their lives, had been his partner in every sense of the word. As the years continued forward and their time together on earth eventually came to its natural end, they did so knowing they had lived well and loved deeply. The ranch continued to thrive under Samuel's management, passed down to his children and then to theirs, each generation adding their own chapter to the story that began with an act of simple kindness on a September afternoon in 1878. The small church where Logan had first found Hannah sleeping still stood, maintained by the community as a reminder of their shared history. And every year, on the anniversary of Logan and Hannah's wedding, their descendants would gather there to celebrate not just a marriage, but the enduring power of compassion, faith, and the belief that even in our darkest moments, help can arrive in the most unexpected forms. Their story became legend in the area, told and retold around dinner tables and at family gatherings, a reminder that one person's choice to care for another can change the course of multiple lives. The woman who had once had nothing but hope and determination had built an empire of love. The man who had simply done what he thought was right had found his soulmate and built a legacy that would endure for generations. In the end, Logan and Hannah's story was not about grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though it had elements of both. It was about showing up, about choosing kindness when it would have been easier to walk away, about building a life together one day at a time through hard work and unwavering commitment to each other. It was about finding home in another person and creating a family from nothing but love and determination. And perhaps most importantly, it was about the truth that sometimes the best things in life come from the moments we least expect, when we walk into a church seeking quiet reflection and find instead the person who will change our entire world. It was about having the courage to offer help and the wisdom to accept it, about trust and faith and the transformative power of love that endures through every season, every challenge, every joy and sorrow that life brings. Their love story, which began with a cowboy finding a desperate woman sleeping in church pews and offering her a real bed and a hot meal, became a testament to the best of what humanity could be. And though they eventually passed from this world as all people must, the legacy they built together, the family they created, and the love they shared continued to ripple outward, touching lives and inspiring others to choose compassion and kindness in their own journeys. In the golden autumn light of Colorado, in the mountains and plains they had called home, their story lived on, a reminder that home is not just a place, but the people we choose to build our lives with, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of human decency offered to a stranger in need.